Today, what Jason and I will talk about is running Linux and FreeBSD on Azure. There's actually, if you noticed, this time we actually have quite a few sessions focusing on open source Linux, like probably almost 10 sessions. This is probably a record that we've had. Yes, round up, yeah. Microsoft has, on any event talking about just Linux open source. So different session has little bit different angle spills. Like yesterday, there was Docker Chef, using System Center, manage heterogeneous environment, all that kind of previous sessions. Now today's session, we will go a little bit behind as how do we actually make Linux run on Azure, and how you as our customer can actually bring your own images, if you will, to get running on Linux, okay? So that's our today's focus. And the way we're going to run this is, I will focus on the session content, and Jason will run demos throughout the sessions, and we're trying to hold at the end of the session to give you time to ask questions, okay?
And pay attention, because I will give you the T-shirt off my back and some others.
That's right.
We'll ask some questions at the end, so try to remember what you can, and we'll give the T-shirts out.
Pick up the cues on this one. And Jason, we're ready to strip out his T-shirt to give it out. So I think first, we got it. It's a heterogeneous environment. Whether it's on-premise, whether you're running, maybe you're running Windows host, but you have different varieties of clients running different versions of Linux or FreeBSD and Windows in your on-premise environment. And the same thing holds true for public cloud. For various reasons, maybe you're invested in your application stack that's already heavily using open source Linux, or you have talents, expertise already in that area, yet you do want to take advantage of the public cloud. So you want to, with minimum effort, while preserving your investment already in this area. So on public cloud, you also want a heterogeneous environment. I think we heard you, we got it. It's not the kingdom of Windows anymore. We got it. So we're really embracing that. We're really trying to provide this environment to address customers' needs. Now, it's not easy, really. Microsoft has been a long time. I'm associated with Windows. My golly, our identity is Windows. So it really takes a lot of effort to embrace that culture and technology and really make Linux run well. So just to get the point, really get the message really across that we're really serious about it. We're really here to make all this Linux really run well and FreeBSD run well on our platform. Oh, I'm sorry, I need to click on this. Here's the logo. Here's our CEO Satya actually publicly announced Microsoft really loves Linux. It's really hard to believe this. For a couple of years ago, I think a couple of years ago, if you say something like this in Microsoft, it's pretty much a career suicidal statement, not to exaggerate. And I remember myself, I'm actually a Red Hat certified engineer from more than 10 years ago. When I came to join Microsoft, I didn't even dare put that on my resume. Okay. And who knows, today it's actually something very useful, really, it's a very hard sought skills. So yes, so Microsoft is really seriously committed to Linux, and we actually it's a bold statement, we love Linux. Now, I think for next slide, I want to talk about how are we actually really seriously committing to this course, to this journey. So if you look at this, Linux is really real business for Microsoft, not just we're saying that, it's actually happening. So first, if you look at it, today on our public Azure, we have tens and thousands of VMs running. Out of that, 20% of VMs actually is Linux. And that means every 5 VM, there's 1 VM running Linux. And this is all global Azure. And if you look at some of the regions like China, where actually Jason and I are based at, for many of the enterprise customers, it's almost like 50% of what the customers running are actually Linux-based. It's even higher. And you go on to on-premise world, our system center actually has been managing tens and thousands of Linux and Unix systems in the data center or in the enterprise, either in the host environment or in the enterprise data center. Actually, we have one of the extreme case one our customer has. They are managing 10,000 Linux client machines using System Center. And also, of course, many enterprise and hosts are using Hyper-V to really supporting Linux as a guest. That's probably from all the previous sessions you guys heard it clear and loud. And surprisingly, even though we just started to put this bold Microsoft loves Linux up like late last year, we actually been doing that for a while. This may come as a surprise to everyone. If you look at it, 6 years ago, the System Center Operation Manager already started to provide monitoring to Linux and Unix systems. That's 6 years ago. And then 4 years ago, we actually have all the Linux drive. We already started to have Linux drives to be able to get Linux images run well on Hyper-V, and that's 6 years ago. And I'll talk a bit more about this Linux drive later. And 2 years ago, when we just GA publicly announced our IaaS service from Azure, from day one, we had support for Linux. So we've been doing that for a while. It's just been, it's been just not as bold as we were now. Like we're now, hey, we really, love Linux and put it up front. Okay, so now we actually have, in this company, we actually have unprecedented investment in open source. There's dedicated teams, everybody's doing Linux, everybody's asked to use the open source. It's really amazing. In the old days, just 2 years ago, if anyone in the organization wants to use open source, there's a whole long legal process you have to go through to get to even use open source. And today, it's reverse. The culture is, if you do something new, we will challenge, our team challenge ourselves. Have you thought about using open source? Why do you have to invent your own? That not invented here syndrome that Microsoft used to have. I think we're really challenging that. And that's internally. And of course, externally, we just talked about, we're really striving to provide best experience for our Linux and FreeBSD communities. So that's Microsoft's commitment to Linux. And you know what, guys? Once you are on that journey, it's a one-way path. You cannot return. So we are committed to this. Okay, so let's come back to the session. So what are the goals here, okay? So first of all, we really want to provide, like I mentioned, provide the best experience for whoever, developers or IT pros, that you're either using different varieties of Linux distributions or FreeBSD, come to our platform, have the best experience. And not only that, we want to give you choices, okay? We want to give you flexibility to manage your VMs that you're using coming over. Choices in terms of what flavor of Linux, what release, what version, what distributors, and flexibility in terms of how do you manage your VMs, your Linux VMs running on Azure. And we also want to provide a way for you to easily deploy and manage them. This includes not only service from first party, from Microsoft, as well as from third party. If you've been to the previous sessions, you've seen a lot of partners we have that's really providing this ecosystem to help you with really a rich experience. To summarize, I just want to drive one thing home out of this whole goals. I think we really want to do is we want you to forget about Microsoft is a Windows company. We want you to remember us. We are the best cloud service provider. Just remember that. We're the cloud service provider. We're not just Windows company, if that helps you to remember why we're doing this. Okay, so now let's talk about, all right, that sounds like a great picture I'm painting, right? So how does it really work? How do I, as the developer, IT pro, how do I get my Linux images? How do I run it on Azure? So there's a couple of ways. First of all, you can get from our Azure Marketplace. I think you probably heard enough about Azure Marketplace. That's in the new portal, in the old portal, in the image gallery. You can have them. There's a whole list of all these distro images. You can get them. And then I'll talk a little bit more detail in the next slide about what kind of images are available out there. Or you can bring your own. If you find, hey, out of our images or marketplace, you don't find the version you need. For some reason, you need some legacy versions of a particular distro, you want to hang to it, or you've invested heavily customizing the kernel, you want to keep it, there's a way to do that as well. and I will go each step about how you can do that. Okay? So let's come to the Azure Marketplace. So before we talk about the images you can find from Microsoft Marketplace or your image portal, I want to introduce this called endorsed images. So what does endorsed images means really? It's from partner, like whether it's from OpenLogic or from from Ubuntu, Ubuntu's images or SUSE, all this that we heavily tested. Microsoft invests resources, make sure it runs well on Azure, not only from a feature perspective, from functionality, from also including performance. And this we call it curated, and it's actually published by a partner. Partner also tests them as well. It's also published by a partner. So it's really, we call it curated images. So this is like those images that's being, it's very well tested. It runs really well on Azure. So, and out of this bucket, then you can see, on your right, there's all these major distributions. We have Oracle Linux, OpenSUSE, and OpenLogic-based CentOS, Ubuntu, all this. We just added Core OS for container support not long ago. And under this bucket, there's two categories as well. There's the standard images. Those images that mainly the differentiation between standard and premium is from support perspective. So for standard ones, if you need support, so here's how it works. If it's Azure, you come to us. And if it's related to the distro image, you go to the distro partners, vendors. Now for premium, then there's slightly different story. We become your one-stop shop to take care of all the issues. And that right now, SUSE Linux is the only one in this category. And we hope we'll provide more in that category to make your life easier. So that's kind of the, we call it endorsed, curated images in Marketplace. And then there's other, like I mentioned, we're really building up the ecosystem. And there's other bunch of images that's available in the Marketplace. So the ones I showed you earlier, the curated and the we call it endorsed ones, is mostly a plain vanilla distro. It's just this Linux distro package without any added on solutions or whatsoever. Now, for some of these other ones that's available in Marketplace, they are coming from partners. They actually have a solution stack together with it. For example, you have WordPress, Redis comes together with it. And they also could provide a vanilla OS as well. And those images you can also find in our Marketplace as well. And those are coming from partners. And there's another gigantic repository in the VM Depot, and that's contributed by communities. And for those images, you can just find, you can either download them and manually provision to the Azure, or you actually find if you go to the Azure Marketplace, there's a whole section called VM Depot. You can directly go to VM Depot from Marketplace and provision from there as well. And you can find a lot of other things that's available in that repository. So that's kind of the high level where you would get the images on this one. Now we've talked about, hey, how you find it, all that. So next time, let's first to show you how it actually works. So Jason will actually show you how do you find the image, how to deploy it, and actually do a little bit of management on your VM. So I'll let Jason to show you the cool demo.
All right. Thanks, Gabby. So first of all, just I want to understand really quickly how many folks are using Linux in any form, whether for test or dev production, in Azure specifically? All the hands go down, some up. Okay, got a couple of folks. Okay, so what I want to do here is I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the process, if you will, to go ahead and get a Linux image running in Azure. And as Gabby talked about, there's kind of two big buckets. One is we've got some great resources, both in the portal and VM Depot, to provision images. And there's a manual way as well if you want to bring your own image up. So for right now, I'm going to show you through the Marketplace, through VM Depot, just really how easy it is. Now, keep in mind, when you think about wide-scale deployment, right, the right way to deploy multiple VMs would be through PowerShell. So you can script all of these things. But from a management perspective and just starting, the portal makes it real simple. In fact, to Gabby's point of she being a 10-plus year Red Hat certified engineer from the old school coming in, I'm one of the opposite guys, a 20-year Microsoft Windows veteran in the new Linux world. So for me, when I started to jump into this a couple years ago, the portal made life a lot easier as I started to learn, the command shell and so on. So anyway, so let's get started. If I want to go ahead and start, if you take a look at the new Azure portal itself, it's got a very Windows 8-ish type of UI, basically tiles, object-based, to make it very easy to get around and see what service status is all up, your billing, and so on. Provisioning an image, regardless of whether it's Linux or Windows or a whole solution stack, there's a couple ways to go around it. One is you can browse our marketplace directly, and our marketplace is curated with literally thousands of VM images. Again, whether it's just a base vanilla OS image, Linux or Windows, or more of a solution stack. So for example, you can see we've got Cloudera, New Relic, Oracle Database, and there's CoreOS as just a base OS, and so forth. So why don't we go ahead and start? Let's do a CoreOS alpha provision here real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and create this VM. Now, one of the things that you'll notice about the portal that's interesting is as I continue to go through, it expands out, right? And what we call these are journeys. The idea behind the model of a journey is that the step I did 1 or 2 steps ago, I can always scroll back to. I'm not leaving a screen in sense of that I can see where I was at. And in fact, I can even switch between journeys, and I'll show you that in a second here. But let's go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and call this Ignite CentOS Alpha. Okay. Oh, CoreOS, right. And we'll use the standard Azure username. Now, for authentication, I can do password, or I can just go ahead and paste in my SSH public key. So we provide both, but for demo reasons, I want to make this a little bit easier and just do a password. Okay. Now, as far as my options, I can select your pricing tier, so I can select different VM sizes if I want. I can change my network configuration, so on. I'm going to change my subscription actually over to my subscription here, and I'm going to change our location since we are not in the South Central U.S. We are in Central. That'll make things a little bit quicker. So I'm just going to go ahead and click Create, and I'm done. Okay. So now it's going to go through, and on the back end, it's going to provision the service and get the VM up and running, and then I can manage it. So pretty straightforward. So that's real quick and dirty on how to get through the Azure portal, the new portal. Let's talk about VM Depot for a minute. So again, just a reminder, so VM Depot is effectively a community-curated website of thousands and thousands of images. And we do a base level of making sure that they provision in Azure, but for the most part, it's really fully community-built. And just to kind of give you an idea of how much is put up here, when I was looking at this morning and going through demos, the latest image that was up was this OpenERP Ubuntu image. So in the space of, 2.5 hours, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 new VMs had been uploaded by different parties. So it's pretty broad. So what I want to do here actually is if I go back in the marketplace and do a search for FreeBSD, for example, it's not going to show up in the Azure marketplace. And primarily because FreeBSD as an operating system is not generally a general purpose operating system that we see a lot of folks use. What we do see FreeBSD used for a lot is for virtual appliances. And so what we're going to start to see here shortly are more virtual appliances that will onboard into the Azure marketplace, and they won't show up as FreeBSD. They'll show up as Citrix NetScaler VPX as an example. So, and in fact, to announce, Citrix actually is going to be in our marketplace in the next couple of days. So it'll be the first FreeBSD-based virtual appliance that will be up there. So keep an eye out for that. But if I want to just go ahead and play around with FreeBSD, I can't do that through the portal because we don't have an image there. Let's see what we've got in VM Depot. So I can search directly here, or if I can scroll down and I can do by category, or here I can do by platform. So let's just do FreeBSD. And if I go up to the top here, this is another one. This actually showed up literally overnight, but I want to go ahead and provision a 64-bit FreeBSD 10.1 image. So I can do it one of two ways. If I want to go ahead and get the deployment script and do it myself through Azure PowerShell, let me select my region here. I'll just select East. It'll go ahead and generate the PowerShell commandlet for me, and I can put the options in, paste it in, and then I can batch it up and do multiple if I want. Or I can go through and effectively have an experience very similar to the Azure portal itself and select my options here in VM Depot and go ahead and provision directly. So a good example of the power of behind Azure PowerShell and XPlat CLI being able to batch these operations up. You effectively could build your own internal portal for doing things like this if you wanted to limit what you want to have access to. So let's go ahead and call this FreeBSD 101 Ignite 1, because I think I already have one of those. I'm going to stick with my favorite Azure user. Now, I do want to change some of the options here, so I'm going to change this to a basic A1. I don't need that much. I want to change again over to, let's do East US. My default storage account's going to be fine. My subscription, okay, great. This is all I need. So I'm going to go ahead and create that virtual machine now. And effectively what it's doing is generating the PowerShell commandlet and running it on behalf of my subscription, which I previously authenticated in. So you didn't see that part, but I had pulled in my subscription profile earlier, so it associated my box with my subscription, and I get a server hour. So you get the idea. It worked 2 hours ago, I swear to God. But what it'll do is it'll show the status on the page here of provisioning, and then later you can go into the portal and you can see that status and access it like you would if you were provisioning directly from the portal. Okay? So one last thing I want to show you before I turn it back over to Gabby is, now that we've got our Linux VMs running in Azure, how do we manage them? Okay? And we've done a tremendous amount of work on the team in the past year and a half to do things such as creating VM extensions to be able to configure. Gabby will walk through some of that here soon. But one of the things that's been missing in the platform in Azure in comparison to some of our competitors is having a native SSH-based web console to access at VM. So today what I have to do is I have to download and install PuTTY. And PuTTY's a great app, don't get me wrong, but it's an extra piece of software I have to install and use. So what I want to show you is a very early preview of a web-based console that we're building that we hope to make available here in the near future. And with that, keep in mind, if anybody here has interest in testing this, we're looking for beta testers. So afterwards, come and give me your card, and we'll get you connected up to be able to flight this when it starts to come out in preview. So the first thing you'll notice, I'm going to go over to the portal here. So you can see that I've got a Linux box here running, okay? And now the connect button has lit up magically. So before it was grayed out, you couldn't connect directly. You'd have to use PuTTY. So I'm going to go ahead and connect. And you get a very familiar login UI that you would have in the portal. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. Again, I've got the opportunity to do SSH key if I want to, or password. Let's go and connect here. And what's going to happen here in a minute, again, this is pretty early, but I'm crossing my fingers it's going to work. What you're going to see here is a familiar console basically show up with some other options as well. So all of your commands, work as you would expect them to. In addition to that, I can also, you guys probably can't see in the back, at least I can't with my eyes, so I can actually just, I can increase the font size real easy without having to go through special commands. I can even do things such as copy file directly from this machine to my VM if I want through this UI as an example of some of the things that we're adding. So again, this is coming out soon. Would like to get some feedback from folks that could test it out and bang on it and help us make sure it's great. But just one more example of how we're really trying to make sure that the Linux experience up in Azure is as good as it possibly can be. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Gabby.
Thank you, Jason. I hope from that quick demo you got to get a flavor about how you can find Linux images and how do you deploy it, and actually you can even how to manage it. Okay, so now let's come to all right, you guys may be saying, those all sounds like wonderful, fantastic, but you know what? I don't find any one of the images you have that I really need. I want to do my own. I have my own image that I want run on Azure. How do I do that? Okay, for the next pretty much ballpark of the couple of slides, I'm going to spend the time to go step by step how you do that. Okay, so in order to get your custom image up running, there's really 3 steps. Okay, first one, you need to get your OS virtualized. And then you need really to install, make sure you have a Linux agent that I'm going to talk about in detail what exactly that is and what it does. Then finally, you just need to configure your VM for the Azure. So 3 simple steps, and I'll go to each one of the steps how to do that. So first is virtualize. Then you need to really install this agent. Then you're going to configure your VM. So for virtualize, to virtualize your OS, let's introduce a concept called Linux Integration Service. I kind of mentioned it earlier. So what that is, so as you can see from this picture, Hyper-V, our hypervisor, presents all the hardware underneath it as synthetic devices. What that means is it looks all the same to different client OSs, okay, synthetic devices. And all the OS is the same. However, all the OS, all the client OS, just like real OS, they need the driver to be able to talk to this hardware, like in the real hardware world. So, and we call this is, so that all OS needs to see all the drivers. So what we provide is this device driver that we provide for this client OS talk to this synthetic device. This is really driver. We call it integration service, or we call it Linux integration service. It's really a driver that we provide on Hyper-V, so that all the guest Linux OS could talk to underneath hardwares. So so this is really the concept of Linux integration service. If you heard early versions like, hey, we just released List 4.0, and that's what that means, that hey, this List 4.0 has all the latest, greatest drivers and patches and bug fixes to make it run on our Hyper-V well. So this is one concept one. So this is really what you need in order to have your OS to be virtualized, the list package. Now, the list package, the way we work is we actually upstream those list packages into the kernel, and then so the different distribution vendors could could include them into their distros. So here's a matrix about how it maps out with the different distros. You can see, and also it depends on when the particular distro vendor pick up the list package from that kernel when it upstreams. There's different variety of lagging behind, and that's why you see this matrix here. So most of our curated ones, it has already endorsed, and it's already built into the distros, as you can see from this table. By the way, all this is available on our public website. That I'll have a URL later that you can go to, just get it. So if you want to really know all the details of it. And even if you don't find, if your favorite distro image does not have this latest list built in that's not the end of the world either. You actually can build the list, download from our website, to really build into it. And the list, we have our binary is in our download center from Microsoft, and all the source code is actually in GitHub that you can get it and recompile it. So this is how really virtualize your OS, get this driver for Hyper-V included into your distro image, in your image, then that's how it becomes a virtualized OS. The next topic I want to introduce about Linux agent. You're going to hear a lot in the next couple of the 20 minutes, because that's a key piece that we use actually interacts between your image, VM image, and our Windows Azure Fabric. So this is a package that it's a Python based actually, and it's under Apache license 2.0, and it's open sourced. You can get it from GitHub, and it's just a standard Linux package. And so why it is important is because any image you run, whether it's a Linux image, whether it's curated or your customer image or it's FreeBSD, you all need this agent, because that's what really drives the communication between your image, the VM image, and our Azure. Now, what it does is, so let me quickly go through what exactly and why, what it does. So it does a couple of different functions. The first bucket is like admin type of work. So it creates user account. Everybody needs that. And it also creates the host name and the publish host name to the platform DNS. and also does a bunch of configuration with SSH keys. For example, it configures SSH key authentication type, and it also deploys the SSH key value and pairs to the platform. And also it does disk management. It helps to like format and mount the resource disks. And then it also manages the network, like make sure the network routes really is compatible with our platform DHCP server. And it also ensures the stability of the network interface names on the VMs. And it also does some of the kernel configuration, for example, the virtual numer, and also some of the SCSI timeouts really needed for root devices. It does it. So the WALA agent, we call it WALA agent, Windows Azure Linux agent, does all these functions. And another important thing for diagnostic purposes, it actually redirects the console to your serial port, so you can do debugging when things go wrong. And that's another key function it provides. And lately, which I will talk about this VM extension function that we introduced recently, that really relies on this agent to be able to have this framework in place so the VM extension would work. And we just added things, the 2.05 of this agent. And I will explain that later. So that's really the Linux agent, what it does and what it is. And Linux agent depends how it's getting packaged up, picked up by different distro vendors. It also has this support matrix on this. So first of all, like I said earlier, it's a Python. It's open sourced. You can get it from GitHub, and for some of the distros, it's already in the repo already. You can just get it from their repo, and depends on different distro vendor. They may be in different directory. That's fine. You can find them. We all listed out here. And again, this table is available on our website. You can get them all. So if you use our curated ones, it's already there. It's already, when you load the image, it will automatically install the agent. Now for the ones you want to customize, that's where you're going to get to trying to install on your custom images. Okay, and here's really simple to install it. First, you use RPM, to adapt to unpackage it, and then you want to put into this SBIN area to install it. It's just very simple, straightforward way to get this agent installed on your VM, on your distro. So we just talk about, quickly summarize. There's 3 steps to get your custom image up running. One is you need to virtualize your OS. Second is you need to install this agent. And third, you need to configure your VM for Azure. So we're at the 3rd steps now. How do we configure your VM for Azure? And there's a little 4 simple steps. This first actually is pretty straightforward steps. So first, you need to prepare your VM to be uploaded. Then you need to have a storage account at Azure where the VM will be residing at. Then the third, you have to prepare a secure connection between your local machine and the VM and Azure. And lastly, just upload it. Okay, so those are the 4 steps. Then I'll go through 4 steps. So to prepare your VM for Azure, there's many ways to do it, and the different distro packages has different ways. So this is really, there's a whole website you can go look at. And here's a summary, just generically to give you an idea. So first one, you need to convert your VHDX to VHD. Right now, the hypervisor running on Azure is actually different, does not recognize VHDX. It's actually a little bit different from the on-premise Hyper-V. And the good news is this is converging. It's going to change. So first, you need to use your Hyper-V manager to convert VHDX to VHD. Then you need, we always recommend you use a standard partition instead of the logic volume manager. By default, it's LVM. The reason is because we're really trying to avoid a name conflict between the LVM and the OSVM OEM. Especially later, if you want to debugging, you have to reattach your OS image to another VM. So we really recommend you use a standard partition. And do not create any swap space, because I mentioned earlier, if anybody remember, maybe it's time to give a t-shirt, the WALA agent, the agent actually creates swap space for you on the resource disk. And again, make sure the SSH server is running. By default, normally it does, but it doesn't hurt to make sure it is running. And so it's configured to start on boot. If you don't have that, then the demo that Jason just showed will not work. As a short console, always need that server running in the background. And the last step is you really want to clean up your VM, get ready to be uploaded to Azure. So you want to deprovision it. And what it does is deletes your account, all that. And all that information will be installed when you are ready to provision your VM, depends on your configuration file once you upload your image to the Azure. Okay? This is how you prepare. Step one, prepare your VM for Azure. Then we said you need a storage account. We're going to put you this image, right? This is on Azure. And when you create a storage account, there's just one thing I want to call out. There's actually, you have choices. Like I mentioned earlier, we always want to give you choices. And when you create a storage account, you also have choices. And you can create a simple storage account, or you can create like in this geo-distributed replica. And this is we really highly recommend, because in the unforeseeable, natural disaster or outrages, if you create this type of storage account, the replicated, then you will have an ability to get your application up and running. Of course, there's a price to pay for it. So as pros and cons, you have to weigh through, which one's important, paying the price or, hey, make sure my application is always up and running regardless in what situation. Okay, so do want to call that out. And so we just talked about first step and the second step. Now come to the third step. Now you prepare your VMs, you have a storage account in Azure. Now you want to have a connection with Azure. Actually, Jason just did that on the demo. You add Azure account. So you do the simple command. Once you do this command, add Azure account, it pops the login. I don't know if you guys caught it. It pops up login account, and then you get your Azure account in. Then you have to select subscription. Many times people have multiple subscriptions, so you have to select which subscription I want this VM image to be residing in. That's the second command is for. So that's how you prepare your connection. There you go. Once you do these two steps, you have a connection with Azure, a secure connection with Azure. Now let's come to the last step, which is really to upload your images. Now you can do this from the PowerShell. This is a very simple. I'll explain the command. So first one, you see add Azure VHD. That means like I'm uploading VHD. I'm uploading a VHD, and the blob storage URL is the URL. We just create a storage account in your Azure, and that's the URL that you can use here. And then you can create image folder. Under this blob storage, where do you want to put it? It's a folder, right? And then you give a VHD name. This VHD name will be the one show up in your management portal. I think just in the management portal, it will show up as what the image name is, whatever it's Core OS or CentOS or Ubuntu. And then you give a local file path where the local VHD is residing. Pretty intuitive, right? There you go. So this is how you upload your image to the Azure. So that's really the 4 steps. First one, really to get your to get your VM ready and then have a storage account and set up a secure connection and then upload it. Just the 4 steps. And there's other ways actually to upload an image to Azure as well. This is very new. We actually we're still in preview, just about to GA about Azure Site Recovery Services. So this is you can actually do this is more like a migration. If you already have a VM, even from VMware, this Azure Recovery Service helps you to move this VM into Azure. And if even it goes even one step further, if you have a physical machine, hey, I want to just go from physical to virtual and go to Azure, and this service also helps you do that as well. I don't know if you guys being at our booth area, that's actually a Azure Site Recovery Service team was there trying to explain a lot of details of that. So this is coming as new. Okay, so just quickly summarize, before I go to the next concept of VM extensions, to get your customer, we talked about, hey, you can go to our gallery, web, or marketplace to get those curated or partner contributed or community contributed images. Or you really want to do your own, okay? Then you can go through different steps. You can configure your VMs, right? You can load the agent, and you can upload it. And then those are the steps to get your own custom image up running on Azure. So now let's talk about the next section. I want to introduce a pretty fairly recent new feature called Azure, the VM extensions, Azure Linux VM extensions. Well, it's new. It's more in terms of the Linux world. The feature actually been existing for Windows for quite a while. As you can see, we're really trying to catch up a lot of things for Linux, given a lot of things already happen in Windows. But we're doing that pretty fast. So what this VM extension is, it is actually a software that provides you with a lot more additional ability to manage your VMs. It's a package with manifest and executables, and you can apply this during when the VM just got provisioned or after when the VM is running. And you can also apply multiple of VM extensions to a VM, or you can add, delete, do all that kind of things. Now it does, that's why I said earlier, the Linux agent is very important. Since 2.06, we start to support this VM extension. So you have to remember, if you want the extension ability, you need this Linux agent at 2.06 or higher. And all these extensions, you can either, of course, you can apply this extension either through PowerShell command or through Portal, and we'll do a demo later. So those are the current VM extensions we already have, and I think we released them about 6-7 months ago. And one of the most popular ones is this custom script. What it does is actually allowing to apply a script to a bunch of VMs you have. For example, and using any language that your target guest OS would support. For example, you want to apply a software to all your hundreds of VMs, Linux VMs running. Then you can use this script that it just does this for you. It's pretty cool. It really saves a lot of time. And another extension we have is VM Access. So this is really like the best buddy for system admins. When you forget your root password, you need to reset your password. The VM Access actually helps you to do that. I don't know if any of you were at the Tech Ed in Barcelona we had in end of November. Actually, we did both of those demos last time because that time it was new. And this time we're doing something new demo later. Now, OS patching. Obviously, OS patching is pretty frequent task we all have to do for Linux OSs. And this allows you to decide what to patch, when to patch, how frequent to patch, this kind of work. And it helps you configure those kind of behavior. This is another extension we're providing. Now, coming more, monitoring. And with this, we heard a lot of requests from customers who really want to know what's going on with their VMs, And so this monitoring extension will help you to really understand, take telemetry data, take performance data, take capacity data, and so you can do some preventative work for your VMs running on Azure. And this is coming very soon. And the VM snapshot, this is really take advantage of our Azure backup service, and really helps for the state restoration of the VM images in Azure. And that's coming soon too. And the last one, the VM encryption, it actually really supports, you already have encrypted VM and will help you to move to the Azure, or you want encrypted data disk in Azure, in Azure. And that's a demo that Jason is going to do. So I think we come to demo time. Okay. So we'll show this VM encryption extension capability now.
All right, Gabby, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see here. First thing I want to do is, real quick, before I jump into the VM encryption demos, I wanted to talk a little bit about extensions as far as availability and how to access. Now, again, typically you're going to access and utilize extensions through Azure PowerShell or XPlot CLI, but you can do some through the portal. And I wanted to show you that real quick, where that's at. So if you go under all settings for your VM, go to extensions. Right now, for this VM, which you saw me just provision recently, has no extensions installed. So if I want to install an extension, here's the list of extensions that are publicly surfaced through the Azure portal. And of course, there's Microsoft and there's third-party partners as well. Like Datadog just was released this week at Ignite and is a new one. And then here's the custom script extension that Gabby was talking about. And from here, when you create it, you have the option to go ahead and then through the portal, actually upload the script that you want for that VM, and then it'll run that script. So just wanted to show you that real quick. The other thing I wanted to pivot and show you is I talked about the portal having this journey experience, right, where I can go through and I can go all the way back to the beginning of that journey and being able to switch. So I'm going to actually go to my active journeys here, and I'm going to switch over to my encryption scenario. And I've already got a journey created in this case, and it's going kind of nuts. There we go.
By the way, we also call this blade.
Well, it's a blade. These are individual blades that open. Every time I do something, a new blade opens, and the collection of blades is called a journey. So anyway, what I want to show you real quick, again, just to give some background on VM encryption, as Gabby talked about. The challenge that Linux admins have today with regards to encrypting either OS or data disks, specifically in Azure, is there's not been a mechanism to be able to manage the key, or in this case, really a passphrase, for that encryption. And so as a result, there's two problems there. Number one, every time you want to access that volume, during, in between sessions, you have to enter the passphrase manually. Obviously not very scalable. And that session is going to end. Anytime you have to reboot the VM or you detach or you unmount the volume, you'd have to re-enter the passphrase. So what we're working on right now, and this is not released yet, this is actually very early, so the demo that I'm showing you is really going to kind of show you the end of the covers back-end stuff, not the integration into the portal experience. But what's going to happen in the portal is we're going to have a really great integrated key management experience through Key Vault that you'll be able to manage encryption keys for multiple scenarios, this being one of them. So I'll try to specify where you're seeing things that are real and not, and so on. So but realize that I'm not showing you anything that you're going to see in the portal and even some of the scenario. I just want to show you how it works real quick. So what I've got here is an Ubuntu 14.04 image running, and you'll see that I've got two disks attached. I've got a data disk. Right? It's a small 1 gigabyte disk. There's nothing on it. In fact, I attached it as an empty disk. Okay? And then I've got this FAT32 key disk, and this is effectively a disk that has my passphrase in it. Now, the actual implementation won't be like this. As I said, Key Vault is not implemented, and when it is, you'll manage that key separately. And I'll kind of walk through that experience. But I wanted to show you these disks are attached. Okay? So what I'm going to do is, real quick, walk you through the PowerShell code that I'm going to go ahead and run to enable the encryption. So basically what you see here is I'm declaring the service name, which is basically the VM name, encryption demo. And then the private config. Effectively what we're doing is we're going to query the disks that are attached. We're going to encrypt with this passphrase, Microsoft loves Linux because we have CCIC at 123. The file system and the mount point that we're going to mount it at. So as we go through and actually run the commandlet, it's going to go ahead, it's going to basically set the extension, the VM encryption extension, and then it's going to grab temp Azure VM, which is basically grabbing my VM name, and then it's going to run the private config information to go ahead and do two things. It's going to crypt that volume, it's going to go ahead and associate it with the session, and then that disk will be there and we'll be able to access it. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab this code. Copy it. All right, I'm going to go into Azure PowerShell here real quick. You can see that I'm logged in. Let me go ahead and just paste it, and we're going to go and run this code. Okay? So it's going through right now, and it's grabbing the VM. It's going to go ahead and run the extension, associate the extension with the box, and then go through and do the encryption that I talked about. Now, this is going to take a minute or two. So while that's going on, let me kind of walk through really what's happening here, or what's going to be happening here in the long run. Okay? So Azure Disk Encryption, this is an example of feature and functionality that we're bringing forward to the Azure platform with Windows and Linux at the same time. Okay? You're going to continue to see this where as we bring forward capabilities into Azure, it's not a Windows first and then we'll get to Linux when we get to it. We are really striving towards parity and bringing features forward where it makes sense. And this is an example of that. So what's happening here? So the customer is basically agreeing to encryption by providing their key material. So for a Windows VM, that would be a BitLocker key. And then, of course, in the Linux case, it's going to be a passphrase. Then the Azure Service Management is going to go ahead and basically update the service model with the encryption and Key Vault information when it's implemented up to the host. And then at that point, that key will be stored in a Key Vault, which has separate access than the actual VM and Azure storage does. And what will happen is it'll then go ahead and associate and encrypt and decrypt that volume on the fly as needed with that virtual machine, whether it's an OS disk or a data disk. And the interesting thing here, from a user experience perspective, as far as accessing that VM, it'll be completely transparent on the use case. If that server goes down, you reboot it back up. there's no encryption key needed or passphrase needed to enter it in manually. It'll all be managed through the key vault. So the key piece here is we're giving the administrator the ability to control the keys and then control access to those keys upon accessing that VM. So let's get out of this and go back to our demo. All right, so that has completed. Let's see what, let's go ahead and go into our console here. Okay, so I'm attached to this VM now. And you can see prior to running the encryption, these are the lists of the volumes that are in my Linux VM. And effectively what you've got here is, 2 1 gigabyte drives. One is the key disk, one's the data disk. Let's go ahead and do an update here and see if that encryption shows up. It does. Okay, great. Let me clear this so we can actually get a good view. Okay. So now you see I've got encrypted disk on SDC, and then my, let's see where it is, and then I've got my data disk there as well. So let's just to go ahead and show you how this works. Let me go ahead and let me get to sudo access here, get root access. Okay, let me go ahead and let's do Microsoft loves Linux. Put that in file test. Okay, great. Now let's go ahead and show that it's there. Okay, Microsoft Linux. We now have data in that data disk theoretically it's encrypted, and you can see that it's encrypted from the tag. What I'm going to go ahead and do now, I'm going to reboot this VM, and that's going to take a little while. But when that VM comes back up, I'll be able to go ahead and console access into it, access that disk, and be able to see that Microsoft loves Linux without having to enter a passphrase. So it's all magic. So that's going to take about a minute to happen. While that's going on, I wanted to show you something else really quick in terms of information. So over the week, we've been throwing a ton of information at you with regards to Linux and Azure. There's been multiple sessions. This is the last one. I see people taking screen grabs, trying to capture stuff. I want to point you to the one-stop shop, and this is in the deck as well, one-stop shop URL for all documentation with regards to Linux in Azure, and just walk you through it real quick. So we had a lot of feedback that it's hard to find this stuff, right? So we went ahead and worked with our documentation team to try to collate it all together and get one source. So basically in this article here, you'll see a few things. Number one, just overall kind of general pointers and so on, and then specific instructions per distro. As Gebby mentioned as an example, when you're uploading your own VHD into Azure, the steps that you need to take for Ubuntu versus CentOS versus Oracle Linux or what have you, they may vary, right, based on the version and the distro. So there's information here not only specific to that, but also specific to some of the application stacks. If you want to configure MySQL clusters on your Ubuntu VM in Azure, how do you do that? How do you do that in a highly available way? We have documentation on that. So just going through, we cover the core distros, we cover FreeBSD, some of the basics around Azure CLI, which is relatively new, which is great, and so forth. So this is a really great place to start if you want to jump in and start playing around. It's a long article that's pointing to a lot of other articles because there's a lot of stuff to know here. So please feel free to check it out and give us some information in terms of whether this is helpful or not, and can we make it better. You can point us back to it. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at our demo here and see if my machine's back up. What did I call that machine? No, that's right, encryption demo. That should have been easy to remember. And there it is. Okay, let's go ahead and connect in. I was hoping I can connect if the VM's back up. It should be by now. In the meantime, Gebby will sing a song.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we're back in now, so let's go ahead. As you can see, there's that encrypted disk. You can see the key disk as well as mounted. So let's go ahead and... Actually, I didn't need to do that, but that's all right. And there we go. Microsoft loves Linux, no passphrase. It was all magic in the back end. So there you go. And with that, I'm going to go and turn it back over to Gabby.
Thank you, Jason. I hope that was pretty clear to you guys how the extension works, and what are the capabilities you actually could take advantage by using this extension ability on your own. I mean, this is just a few examples we show and we develop, and we really want a lot more of you, partners, customers to contribute to the extension as well. Okay, so I think you already went through this. Yeah, speaking of the partner, yeah, so we actually have some third-party, partner contribute extension as well. One of the ones is Chef. I don't know how many of you use Chef. Cool, great. So we have the Chef, actually it's provided by Chef, and we actually have both Linux and Windows extension for Chef, and it really allows you to provision a virtual machine with Chef client and register with your Chef server. And Docker too. How many of you Docker? Okay, so actually there was a whole session yesterday talking about Docker, and we have this extension as well, and that's really coming from Docker. And there's whole details about it. Since I don't see a lot of hands, so I'm not going to go a lot of detail, but if you want to know, there's a link that helps you to understand more detail. Who knows, someday you may need to use it. And there's another is this Cloud Link Secure VM. It actually does pre-provision kind of the authorization, authentication, image quality, integrity checking, and that kind of work. And it also helps to do the encryption. As you notice, we do the boot volume and data volume encryption. Interesting, Jason just showed our encryption extension, right? And here's the third-party one. It's okay, We love more, like we said earlier, we give you flexibility and choices, and so we have our first party, you have third party you can use, you can choose which one you really like. So here's a lot more that's from the third party, and we're really trying to get more and more of this pumped into our portal, and you can use it. So this is much about the extension. Now, I think Jason already showed about the one-stop shop. We call it the Linux landing page, because we feel like Linux has not been, in the past, has been not getting enough attention, so we really want to overdose it. So we have this concentrated like Linux landing page, give you all the information. Here's all the links you have. And so you can go to browse them through them. And one thing I want to point out is feedback. Microsoft now really trying to, to embrace open source as one of our new cultures, and really obsessed with customers is another our culture. We really need you. I've mentioned this is a journey. Our journey will not be successful without you, because we are here to serve you. So we want to hear from you. So there's whole feedback.azure.com. That's where we really look at it. You can just really put into what you feel like missing, not working. That helps us to make our products better. So this is the last link here. And just quick recap, actually today I mentioned there's more than probably 10 sessions that's in this Ignite, all about different kinds of open source Linux running. And you probably, if you haven't got a chance to see all of them, it's all recorded. You can go online to revisit them and send email to speaker if you have questions, all that. And so this is it's all there for you to go back to look at it. Maybe you feel like you were overwhelmed for 5 days here, then there's a way to digest later, slowly, and still have the chance to ask us questions. Sorry, somebody wants to take pictures? There you go. Yeah, yeah. And so quickly, a summary, I think we really, our mission here is we want to become your best cloud service provider. Okay, we're not, whether you're using Linux or FreeBSD or different versions of distros, we are here trying to make your life easy and better and really take advantage of the best that cloud can provide to you. That's really the summary. I think that's all we have here today.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm not going to shoot these out of a cannon, but I got a couple of questions. See if you were paying attention or not. If you've got one or two as well, you can jump in. But let me start with who is the first FreeBSD-based virtual appliance that is onboarding into Azure? That guy right there. That guy had his hand up first. Sorry, I saw it. Right there in the back of your hand up. You. Citrix, there you go. All right. What size are you? Medium?
Let me find and see.
There we go, right here, coming at you. Right on. Okay. All right.
I got a question. So which year did we start to provide a Linux integration service? I saw you. 11, you're right. 4 years ago, Linux integration service. Yours is a different answer. That's System Center Operation Manager supports this. What size is yours?
Okay, one more. All right, what are the three kind of core things that you need to do to get your Linux VM running in Azure? Who had their hand up first? That gentleman right there? Configure for... There you go. All right. We got it. That counts. What's your size, my friend?
This is
a double XL?
Is yours extra large?
This is XL. This is probably as big as we get.
He needs extra large. This is large. Does large work for you? You have to give that to him. This guy, that guy, yeah, he probably needs an extra large. I think large probably works for you.
All right.
Here, large. Thank you.
You got a question? You got something another one you can ask?
To just get how many steps it is to upload your customer?
Already did that. We just did that one.
Okay.
Sure.
Come this way, sure.
Go ahead.
So how does this work with Red Hat licensing?
So currently, it's a great question. We get it very often. I'll say we are heavily interested in having Red Hat in Azure. We are currently not a certified cloud provider for Red Hat at this time.
Is there a timeline for
Not one that we can share at this point.
But there is one.
Nothing more that I can share at this point.
We support it on Hyper-V, no problem today. Right? It's on the public cloud. That's both company has a vested interest to work it out.
That's a good point. Yeah. So in fact, we do almost more testing on Red Hat for Hyper-V than others because you got CentOS and Oracle
CentOS
that are based off of the
working,
Red Hat kernel, so we get a lot of value out of that. You in the back?
Excuse me. Sorry. I'm sorry.
That's a really good question. We work directly with Oracle and Canonical and OpenLogic and SUSE and so on. Effectively, what we try to do between patches, number one, between updates for the Walla agent, the Azure Linux agent, which we update fairly frequently, and then just in general updates from kernel downstream things. It varies. It varies based on distro vendor. But whenever there's something significant like Heartbleed or Shellshock or the GhostLib or the glibc of vulnerability, we try to get those vendors to patch them as soon as possible. So it's important to note that the images that are in the gallery, the Azure endorsed images that Gabby talked about, are actually created by the distro vendor and published by the distro vendor. Right? We test them along with them, but it's really up to them to bring those in. But we update them fairly frequently. And then we also make older versions available. They're not exposed in the portal, but they can be available. You can query them in Azure PowerShell and get older versions if you want to stay on an older version for stability reasons or for consistency reasons in your shop.
I mean, is there a history of the image changes available on Azure?
Again, that's up to the distro vendor to put a change log with the distro, and some do, some don't, and so it's kind of hit or miss, right? Okay. Yeah, huge. Yeah, good, that's a good question. The timeline right now is we're trying to get it out this summer. I mean, it's not a significantly hard piece of work. It's a matter of we want to make sure we're providing a great experience, right? So we want to get it out and get some user testing. Assuming that testing comes back, the plan is for this, I'd say, midsummer.
If you notice, our whole Azure service is kind of running in
Preview mode.
Yeah, our planning is like half a year, so sometimes it's a train of service comes out together. So summertime.
Yeah.
You mentioned the VMware. You have the new, just released the, I don't know what you call it, recovery.
Azure Site Recovery.
Yes. Can you do the VMware on the 4-step?
On the 4-step.
What you're saying.
Oh, yeah. Let me actually. That's a really good. I'm glad you brought that up because the Azure Site Recovery service basically automates those 3 steps for you, right? So the way this service works, it's really slick. It was designed for disaster recovery, obviously, because the idea is that you can replicate your on-prem VM in Azure. So it'll go ahead and take a snapshot, and then it'll trickle updates. And then once that VM is fully replicated, if you set up a VNet in your network in your enterprise, that server goes down. It can automatic failover. So the theory, or not theory, the idea behind it is, if you want to migrate, just do a DR scenario, and then unplug the server, and you've basically migrated. Okay, I'm simplifying, but in the portal itself, or the options are you can migrate not only VMware servers up to Azure, obviously Hyper-V servers, but even physical servers. So the service itself will go ahead and do a network discovery. You plug in your SEVMM server or your VMware vMsphere management server into the portal. It'll then go ahead and query all your hosts and your guests, and then you can pick the guests that you want to go ahead and convert up, and it'll shove it on over.
That works for VMware.
Yep, works for VMware.
It does.
Yep.
Yeah. There's a question here.
Yes. I missed part of
So support. You talking about support? Did you mention Premiere or not? Oh.
Oh, Premier
Yeah.
support specifically? Oh, okay. Yeah. You want to answer it? Want me to answer?
For Premiere support, you can. This just like any Microsoft service. If you have a Premium service, this is part of the package deal. Our CSS, our customer support organizing Premium, they all have people really have dedicated expertise in this area. So there's no difference in terms of you buying Premium support. Now, in terms of the distro vendor support, like I mentioned earlier, some of the support you have to come to them. Some of the support you come to us directly. And right now, Suzy is only one everything you come to us, one-stop shop. Anything you want to add?
Helmet.
With all the extensions and running in Azure, is it possible to get it on-prem also, so in Azure Back or Azure Stack?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
So that's the entire idea behind the Azure Stack is exactly that. If you
Consistency,
for consistency, once it's applied, you can effectively do all the things that we talked about in your local data center and extend it up to the cloud, up to the public cloud. So yes, all compatible. Okay.
That's the whole Microsoft's unique value prop is bring the public cloud, the best of them, to the on-premise, right? That including open source Linux support. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's effectively, they're community-based. So anybody can create anything and put it up there. Now, we do a quick check, right, to make sure that there's nothing, as much as we can. We don't go through and virus scan and things like that. We're a repository for those images, and we make sure that they provision and run, right, because you need the agent installed and so on. As long as they can provision and run in Azure, your mileage may vary on them. So be careful about a production scenario would be my advice. If you want a real production enterprise-grade solution, the Azure Marketplace is the best place to get something that's going to have good fallback support, both for Microsoft and the vendor. Or bring your own and follow the steps,
yeah, exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And make sure that when you follow the steps, there's the technical aspect, and then per the Red Hat question, and there may be more than Red Hat, make sure that your license portability applies to Azure for whatever product you want to bring up.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're not going to do any license enforcement or even reporting. We don't even know, and we don't want to know, right? So to just make sure you're in compliance. Yes, sir.
So given that like 90% of servers out there are running in Linux, and Microsoft is making the move to open source like .NET framework, basically allowing you to run on Linux, is there any fear on your end that basically Windows Server is going to be like its market share is going to be obliterated by Linux on Azure?
From our perspective, we want people using our services, and we believe that the value add of both Windows Server in your private cloud and Linux as well as both in our public cloud is the best solution that's available, and we believe we can provide the best services. So at the end of the day, our concern is really more around ensuring that we've got customers that are happy using our products end to end, whether they're choosing Windows or Linux. We prefer Windows. We get a license fee for Windows, but at the end of the day, it's a customer relationship that we want to establish, and we make more money off of that in the long term than we do off of just transactional. So we're happy across the board.
It's already reality, so we have to acknowledge it, really, right? And I think I think the whole company is really driving cloud business. Even the Windows Server organization is trying to really help Azure business. So so I think we're already over that hump.
And you take a look at some of the innovations that we're bringing forward with the Windows Server.
Yeah, the Nano Server, for example.
Exactly. Nano Server is a great example of where we want to be right there with Linux in terms of having a streamlined operating system that can run in the cloud or on-prem that meets those kinds of needs. So we think there's value in both worlds, right? Obviously, in the Linux open source space, you've got a lot of stacks available of software that just run. And one of the things that we didn't talk about in this session, but we're talked about in previous sessions, is even as we think about our solutions, our PaaS services that run in Azure, we're a bit agnostic whether we run our own PaaS services on Windows or Linux to provide to our customers, right? So, for example, we have HD Insight running, which is running on
both
Ubuntu.
Both Windows and Ubuntu as well. We'll give you both choice.
We give you both choice, right? So from our perspective, what do we need to do to provide the best experience for our customers? That's the top one thing on our mind.
It's not easy, though. I mean, even within Microsoft, not everybody is open as we are. But it is coming. It is going there.
Yeah,
exactly.
Fair point.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, we are a cloud service provider. Just we have keep on chanting that to ourselves,
Why did it take so long for Microsoft to recognize that the server doesn't have a GUI?
Well, I'm not a part of the Windows Server planning team, so I can't answer that question for you, but it's a fair question. This is something we've been working on for a long time, actually. And given that Windows fundamentally has been tied to a graphical user interface, a lot of the services that support that, it wasn't just easy to say, well, just turn off Windows Shell, right? There's a lot of other underlying services that we basically eliminate and turn off as well to really optimize for Nano Server. So turning off the GUI really wouldn't save us much in footprint. The majority of the engineering was around trimming those services that weren't necessary for it. So, but it's a fair question. Yes? Oh, yeah, sorry.
How old is VI run in that console?
In our console.
Well, in the web thing, or does it not run?
I've personally not tried it, but our design goals is
we tried all this in our lab, right?
Yeah, I mean our design goals are to provide as much feature parity with like PuTTY as possible, right? We want to provide as much of an experience as possible. That's why we want to get more. We got good test cases. We got a great test team, but really at the end of the day, they're not deploying enterprise class applications. You guys are, so having you guys try it and say, hey, wait a minute, that is a good example of where that feedback's going to help us.
Does that include X11 as well?
The what?
X11.
X11 Windows.
No, not at this point.
Not at this point yet. So give us feedback.
That's important. Then we need to understand.
It's important. Like how we said, we really want to preserve your expertise from that open source world, so you could have minimum friction running on cloud. That's really our goal. So keep that in your mind. If you think this is very important for you, let us know.
Yes.
Do you have like HA templates in that VM depot similar to like SQL?
We're working on a ton of templates right now. The templates actually, theoretically, people could publish templates in VM Depot, but you're going to see a lot of new templates being curated by Microsoft in just the portal itself. And HA is one of them that's on the list. Keep an eye out. More of those are coming.
A lot, yeah. And also we're having third-party templates coming in as well.
Yeah.
And you're welcome to contribute as well.
Yes, please.
GitHub, yeah. It takes a village to raise a kid. It takes a village to make stuff a truly cloud service provider to be like the agnostic. Okay.
One question: do you need to install the agent on the Azure stack?
Yes. basically, you think about it as, again, the term we say internally is everything's got to be cloud consistent, right? So if it works in Azure, it's got to be the same in Azure Stack as well, right? Just to ensure that there's no, variances in terms of how you administer, deploy, and so on. So the answer is yes. Consistency is important.
Yeah, that work is in progress as we speak.
Okay. Well, thank you guys very
Well,
much.
thank you guys.
Appreciate the feedback.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to our session, even though it's Friday.
Yeah, it is last day. Thank you.